Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Monday, October 4th, 2021, and this is a meeting of the Personnel Subcommittee for the negotiations with the Gloucester Teachers Association. This meeting cannot be attended in person by the public at this time. And it is being, hold on one second. Jonathan, do you have the language somewhere?
Hey guys.
Just a second. Sorry, Mike. It's not on that.
What are you looking for?
I'm just looking for the regular open meeting, state meeting.
All right, want me to read it?
Sure.
This meeting is recorded by video and audio in accordance with the open meeting law, consistent with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and banning certain gatherings such that an in-person of the school committee, subcommittee, personnel subcommittee is not possible. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. The public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary.
This part of the meeting at 3 o'clock is for executive session purposes. Melissa Texera is not going to be at this meeting, as she is away. And so the school committee personnel subcommittee, Gloucester Teachers negotiating team will convene an executive session pursuant to executive session purpose 3 of MGL 39, section 23B, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the Gloucester Teachers Association, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the Gloucester School Committee's bargaining positions. I so move.
Second.
Roll call vote, Maria, please.
Kathy
Yes.
and Jonathan.
Yes.
So we'll be going into executive session. We will be back in open session at 4 o'clock when we begin meeting with teachers.
Okay.
So is that like a robot arm you use to control the camera, or is that someone old-fashioned?
It's the woman behind the screen.
Ah, Wizard of Oz. Got it.
Pay no attention to the woman behind the screen.
Recording in progress. I'm not gonna do it.
Selena, turn off your mic and your sound. Yeah, it's just your sound.
We need to come out of executive session. Make a motion to come out of executive session.
Second,
Kathy?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, we've just come out of executive session. We're in open session and we'll wait for the rest of your team.
Hi, folks.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
So Rachel, do you guys have a counter proposal for us this evening?
Well, actually, we do have some information that we'd like to talk about, and it definitely, it's not exactly a counter proposal, but we do have some things that we'd like to talk about, especially starting first with the financials and then back to the proposals. So if we could have some permission to share screen.
Who would you like to share screen? Who, like, because you got to give it to certain people.
Oh, gotcha. Would you like me to share the screen, or do you want Anthony to share the screen?
You tell us.
I can do it. That way you can focus on the presentation, Rachel.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Are all of our members here? I think 1, 2, 3. Yes, I guess we're not here.
We got 1, 2, 3,
Sorry.
4, 5, 6. 8, is 8 the right number?
Yep.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, are you seeing
Oh,
it?
good, it's nice and big.
So I think Matt is going to begin as part of the proposal, and I'm going to mute because my dog is having an issue.
Let's see if mine starts having one, and it starts having an issue anytime soon. Good afternoon, folks. Nice to see everyone. Thanks for coming out on this Monday, even if it is very rainy. So as Rachel addressed, we do have some discussion we'd like to have about the proposals that were offered. We'd also like to discuss the financial proposals before we respond to other proposals. So Anthony, would you go to the next slide real quick? Thank you. In your address last week, on the first slide, the claim was made that it is the intention to attract excellent entry-level teachers to schools, while continuing to compensate the most veteran teachers at levels they are accustomed to. So we asked you this: why are you giving offers that do not actually address your claims? Next slide, please, Anthony. For a reminder, here are the current salaries. These are the ones that have been effective since the 30th of this, since June 30th this year. Give you a minute to read over those. Thank you, Anthony. Next slide, please. As a reminder, here is the summary that you suggested last session. Seeing as how you suggested it, I'm sure you are all very familiar with it, so we'll go to the next slide, please. And one of the first things that we'd like to address, and to be fair, you did address this as well. Currently, there are no steps after step 13. Some of our more senior teachers, around 48% teachers, are at that step 13, and they have not seen certain financial raises in quite some time. I believe Ruth and Rachel, if you'd like to speak more to that, you can, or we can move on.
It's been 16 years since I've seen a step increase, and for Ruth, I'm sure it's a little bit longer.
It's been a little bit longer. I'm not sure exactly, but it has been longer than Rachel, that's for sure.
Thanks,
I
folks.
think she took a dig at you, Rachel, but I'm not sure.
That was not an intentional one. I'm the older one here.
Thank you. And then Anthony, would you mind just explaining the next slide real quick?
Looking for the unmute button. So yeah, so while our most veteran teachers have not had a step raise in a while, we also want to point out that, and we're going to point out that in the past, their COLA raises haven't been keeping pace. So one of the solutions, which we sort of agree to in principle, is maybe to add another step to the top of the scale and remove some bottom ones. The school committee's current proposal, though, however, to keep people in the veteran status level cut to what paid what they're accustomed to, of 0.5% for those new steps, to get a year 1.5% over 3 years is simply doesn't really match what the school committee claimed. And then in general, for the rest of the staff, which is 52% of your members who are of your employees in this unit who aren't on the top step, step increases are not raises. Just as the school committee is expected to know where their staff are at on the scattergram on the different cells, and to budget from year to year as people move along those steps. Our members do the same budgeting. When they start on step 1, they're looking ahead to years 2, 3, 4, and they're planning their personal family finances with those expected increases. So, offering a 1% COLA for 52% of the Unit A teachers, while pretending or claiming that the step increase they've already budgeted for should be included in their calculations, we think is just not fair and disingenuous. 1% does not reflect to our mind, does not reflect the statements that the committee and the superintendent have made about the goals of these bargaining sessions.
Thank you, Anthony. Would you move to the next slide, please? So for the rest of my time here, I'd like to focus, let's say, on a teacher who is track 1, step 8. Under the current salary, they're making $59,754. Next slide, please. Here's the math on a 1% raise. Again, teacher step 1, or step 8, pardon me, track 1, up to $60,351.54. That is your current offer. Take a moment, look over those numbers, give everyone 30 seconds.
So Matt, just ask a question. So I'm just trying to, you said just say again, track 1, step 8?
Track 1, step 8, yep.
Okay, great. And then, so does this table just include a 1% raise, or does it also include the step raise as well?
Well, step's not a raise. It's only the proportional raise for the 1% at each step. So for example, going back to the track.
Yeah, so this just shows 1% addition, like from the first column, track 1 to the second, it simply shows a 1% increase, right?
Yes, sir.
Right, that's the
Thank you.
1% COLA across the current scale.
I just want to understand the table. Thank you.
Yep. And so that is the 1% suggestion.
Just for the record, the difference is $597.
Yes, thank you. would you go to the next slide, please, Anthony? And this is what a 3% raise, which we're asking for. This is what that 3% will look like. Again, step 8, track 1, up to $61,546.62. Again, I'll give you 30 seconds to look over these numbers. Anthony, if you wouldn't mind, just assuming everyone's had enough time. If not, we'll get these to you ASAP. Anthony, would you mind going to the next slide, please? Okay, so this really quickly is just historic trends in wage increases. I'd like to specifically highlight the percents that have been offered. This is per prior contract, fiscal year 16 to fiscal year 19, and also the current contract we are working under. Next slide, please. Again, let's say this person at that point would have come in at track 1, step 4. Next slide, please. We can follow the numbers through here, step 5. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next slide, please. And this is where the 0.5% start to come in, these 92nd or 91st day 0.5%. What I don't think we all fully comprehend is what a 0.5% might actually look like in the day-to-day or paycheck to paycheck. And I'll get to that a little bit more towards the end of my section of this presentation. Next slide, please. This is the current contract we're working under. Next slide, please, Anthony. Thank you. This is where this 13th step got added for masters. And again, this was the 92nd day, forgive me. And one more, Anthony. And this is where we stand today with a 2.25% increase.
Matt, can you just go back 2 slides? Sorry, just go back 2 slides.
That one?
Got it, okay. Yeah, I just want to see, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks. And would you just skip forward ahead 2 slides, Anthony? And one more. Oh, sorry. This is that effective last date that we discussed in previous sessions. Okay, one more slide, please, Anthony. Thank you. So this is what your proposal actually looks like. $22.13 for that teacher, a gross pay increase per paycheck. Approximately 30% of the paycheck of the money is deducted from each check. Now, while I would love to say that we could all solve for all the issues about deductions and healthcare costs, maybe we can at another point in time, we know we can't. So that teacher only walks away with approximately $15.49 per paycheck.
Matt,
That is
can I
what
ask,
1% looks like.
Matt, can I ask a quick question? Did you use
Sure.
the 26 pay period or the school year pay period?
This is operating under 27 years, which we've discussed. Sorry, should have clarified that. That's my apologies.
You said 27 pay periods?
Are we not operating under 27?
Yes,
pay
we're
periods for this
operating
thing?
on 27.
In the odd years? not-
Right, that's one particular year out of 6 or 7.
But it's this year.
Yes,
Right, it
correct.
is this year, that's true.
It is.
Correct.
year.
This is simply talking about this current year. If you'd like me to do the numbers for a 26 pay cycle, I can get those
No,
back.
no,
to you.
that's
okay.
Okay.
What we can.
Okay. This is one of the things that really kind of struck me because $15.49 is not a whole lot for this certain teacher to take home. Okay. Especially when the cost of living, Anthony, the next slide, please, for the Northeast region has gone up 4.4% over the last year. And the indexes for all items less food and energy increased 3.2%. Our offer is only 3%, and we're still 0.2% the rise of the CPI. So If we're saying we're going to attract and retain talent, then how can we do that when our costs are not even equaling close to the regional price increases over this last fiscal year? And I would like to turn the presentation over to Cynthia. Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. Thank you, Matt, for outlining that for us. So that we can just summarize where we are right now. So far, we've been offered a 111 wage increase. And in the spring, the school committee proposed to decrease benefits and institute excessively burdensome protocols. And we'll go over those in just one moment. Next slide, please. Now, we do have some TAs. You did agree on the substitute pay increase. And even though our members don't directly benefit from that, we do hope that that provides some resolution to our sub problem in Gloucester. We did also agree on instituting 27 pay periods when necessary. I believe those are the only TAs we have right now. Next slide, please. And this, oh yeah, that's still me. So 2 times Governor Baker has given Gloucester accolades for our past school year. And Superintendent Lummis stated that in June 17th. He stated the governor recognized us as a model for the state. Our schools have been written up in papers across the country. Those were teachers that made that happen. We didn't call in. We showed up and we pulled it off. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn that over to someone else, right?
Certainly. To move forward with some of the proposals that we had. Thank you so much, Cynthia. A proposal from the school committee decreased sick time from 17 days to 12 days. That proposal has subsequently been withdrawn. The school committee also proposed to decrease the sick bank maximum benefits from 180 days to 90 days per year and to deny unpaid days off. Next slide, please. Additionally, the school committee has proposed to deny personal days in May or June, to deny religious holidays unless they're used as personal days, to require a 10-day advance notice for medical appointments, and failure to comply with those results would result in a loss of an entire day's pay. Next slide, please. School committee also denied the use of would propose to deny the use of personal days on the 2 days preceding or 2 days following vacations and long weekends. And the school committee proposed to remove themselves from personnel issues. Next slide. Gloucester School Committee claims every day matters, and the Gloucester School Committee would like to focus on time for teaching and learning across all grade levels, yet all Gloucester Teachers Association proposals on collaboration, time on learning, and most other proposals have been rejected. Next slide. Cynthia? You're mute, babe. Cynthia's muted.
Sorry, I didn't think that was my slide, but I guess it is. Oh, yes. Thank you. Sorry. Our Health and Safety Committee and Curriculum and Communication, we had stated, was not working as efficiently as it could. And it put undue burden on building administrators being the point person at each building. We propose to include a team at each building. Your response is the system is working fine and therefore it was rejected. Next slide, please. On professionalism, we felt that educators needed to be consistently recognized as educational experts and partners who have their Gloucester students' best interest in mind. Our solution was to create a joint labor management committee so that we could work with the administration, use all the professionalism that you have in the district, 300 plus people worth of professionalism. Your response was that it would limit the type of collaborative leadership and decision-making, which is contrary to our proposal. We had stated that we would pull in other people. We talked about different ways that we could do this. And this was subsequently rejected as well. And I believe the next slide, please. And then there's release time for GTA presidents. And I can speak through experience. The amount of time it takes to schedule and run meetings between union and administration often makes crucial conversations to be delayed, expands timelines. It should not be expanded. We've experienced that. We have had a previous practice of the GTA president with a half-day release. This has to happen for everything to run smoothly. The fact that it is only for a high school teacher is not, it's not acceptable. Okay, it has nothing to do with what level a teacher is. It's discriminatory, and we have to be able to run our union. The fact that at the high school it's just easier to provide time is not an acceptable answer. Next slide, please, and I'm going to turn this over to Rich and Teresa.
Rich, you want to go? Where are you? I'll
Go
pipe
ahead,
in.
Teresa.
Okay. The proposal, the GTA proposal was equitable mentorship program. New educators, mentors should rotate each year to ensure that all educators have a chance to be leaders and role models for their peers. The solution was that mentorships shall be equitably distributed to allow all qualified teachers to participate in the mentor program. The GSC response was rotating mentors arbitrarily does not make sense because there are likely to be mismatches in relation to grade level, subject area, and working relationship. The challenge is also a numbers challenge with many fewer mentors needed than are trained and available. Well, this is not true in so many of our schools. We are also having a challenge with some schools having the same mentors every single year and claiming it's an oversight after the fact. It's hard to digest that response as being an oversight when we have so many qualified teachers in the elementary, middle school, and high school levels that have not been tapped into. And we feel that this is a problem and we need to address this more than just saying it doesn't make sense that we rotate. Rich, do you want to add to that?
And where we are lacking some mentors in some schools, Teresa, Amy Clayton and I are working on a class right now. So we'll have about 15 or 16 new mentors ready to go next year. But as Teresa mentioned, we have gotten feedback from qualified mentors who've gone through the program who haven't been asked in a number of years, but they've seen many other people be asked on many occasions while they could have helped out, even at times when possibly there were more than one new teacher that needed to be mentored. But the choice was to have one person mentor two instead of one. So all we're saying, we're not saying that some people are better than others. What we're saying is that some people haven't gotten asked, and they may want to know why, but it may also be a matter of we fear that not to say that anyone's playing favorites or anything like that, but we do fear that some people are being passed over for various reasons other than the qualifications.
We go on rejected. Next slide.
So
Bruce?
Carrie and I were gonna do this one together. But we did want to clarify that there's a little bit of incorrect information that the STAR was only required a certain amount of times, because it is required twice a month, once for the math and then once for the reading because of progress monitoring. So there is much more STAR testing. We just wanted to clarify that. We also have spelling testing, maze testing, writing CBMs, and benchmarks, which are not in the elementary at the moment. I believe that was because of COVID. I don't know if they're coming back, but I do believe they're still in the middle school. Am I right about that, Teresa? So
Yes.
there's just there's a lot of testing. We know we need this information for direct teaching. We know that the STAR is our new test, but we certainly need to learn it more before we make any decisions. We'd like to be part of that decision making, but we just want to be careful not to over test them, which has happened in the past. And Carrie, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Just the fact that sometimes students might be taking the STAR assessment just by twice in the same day or back-to-back days. And by the time they're, setting up the computers, hearing the instructions, taking the test, we can't do anything until the last student finishes the test, because they do take it in the classroom. So there have been times that it takes an hour, and it's monthly for each subject matter. And from what I'm being told, that some schools are taking it every month and some schools are taking it 3 times a year. So we're looking for it to be consistent amongst the elementary school as well.
And like I said, I think we need to learn the STAR test a little bit more and know what's best. Do we need to progress monitor them? If we do, we do, but I think we need to know this test a little bit more before we can make those decisions.
Yeah, and the last thing where the students have missed some schooling due to COVID and the virtual learning that happened in March of 2020. It's a lot of time to give up that they're missing direct instruction for a couple hours a week, a couple hours a month. So we just wanted awareness on that.
And I would like to emphasize, coming from the middle school, that not only do we have the STAR 60, we have the benchmark essays, which I keep advocating for, have a fall, have a winter, and the benchmark for the spring would be the MCAS. By the time we have our data meetings in June, we're not going to be teaching these students any longer. We will go then into the fall and have our benchmark. It is time consuming, chasing down students, taking us out of our direct instruction, sometimes up to a week for the essays, and then 1 full day to go and correct them and score them. And it takes more than 1 full day to score these essays as the students progress, because they're writing more. And it is on top of our normal assignments that we're already offering writing assignments for. A lot of time away from the student teaching.
Okay, next slide, please. We had proposed having a parent, teacher, and community engagement section to hold community engagement meetings at least twice a year. This keeps the community involved, it keeps them informed. One of the things that we got from the community when we held forums was that they don't feel that they have enough communication about what's going on in the schools. The GSC response was that you were planning on holding a community engagement meeting relating to development of a new district-wide strategic plan and the use of ESSER 3 funds. Having community engagement meetings for ESSER funds are required for you, but what we're talking about is ongoing meetings. And I think that was explained, just so that it becomes a culture, and that too was rejected. Next slide. And then library services. I think at the high school and middle school, we're seeing declines in library services, and certainly elementary school, we haven't had librarians, how many years ago was it? 15 years ago. we slashed our librarians. The only people who have been in there have been volunteer people. We feel that our students deserve a librarian for library science. And also we did talk about including computer science and technology in there. That was quote, respectfully rejected. There wasn't discussion, written discussion about that. And I'm going to turn that back over to Rachel unless, yep, there you are. Good. Awesome.
So as you can see, many of the, actually, as we move forward, many of the Gloucester School Committee responses included invitations to work together and develop solutions to common issues. For example, in the next slide, you'll see one of our issues with new student integration. Gloucester educators need to know when a new student will be joining their classrooms. And we had a solution to try and get us as much information as possible when students are added. And the Gloucester School Committee, in terms of other responses, actually felt this is more of an operational matter, not contractual, but they'd like to work with us. They'd like to hear some ideas that the teachers had as to how we can address this matter. So there's one example. In the next slide. We had proposed we saw some issues with time in the classroom, teachers being pulled for excessive meetings regarding IEPs, child study data, et cetera, which really limits direct instruction. So our solution was to minimize those classroom disruptions by limiting meeting times where teachers are removed from the classroom. So the Gloucester School Committee rejected this proposal. However, they are willing to work with us on ways to figure out how to minimize any of these activities. They're open to try to figure out ways to minimize the disruptions, et cetera. So another instance where the proposal was rejected, but there's another area for collaboration. Next slide. And another proposal to prioritize the hiring of trained and building-based substitutes. This response was respectfully, this proposal was respectfully rejected because we don't feel that it was a subject for bargaining. Although this being our CBA, we can decide what we want to bargain and what we don't. So it's not a mandatory subject of bargaining, no, but it is certainly a subject that we could choose to bargain together, both of our sides. And here, though the proposal was rejected, the school committee would welcome opportunities to work with the teachers on figuring out how to recruit, train, and retain substitute teachers. Next slide. So how do we work together to find solutions to these common issues? Our solution, we respectfully ask that you reopen the dialogue on the Joint Labor Management Committee that we had proposed way back in March. And that actually concludes our slideshow.
Yeah, and just to touch on a couple of points as we end our presentation here. And not only does the school committee offer an invitation to collaborate in many of its responses, which certainly many of these issues could be solved by a joint labor management committee. It also mentions that, items are, not subject to bargaining, which is, sort of, casting the difference between mandatory and permissive subjects of bargaining incorrectly. Those items which are permissive can be bargained over, including every one of the items that you claim is not a subject. Now, it's true that both parties have to agree to bargain over it, but these are, in many cases, cost-free proposals that simply allow us to resolve these issues. So, we're open to, an actual counter from the school committee in terms of language, right? Bargaining is an opportunity for us to work together to resolve these issues. And those that either can't be resolved through language as we go back and forth, certainly we would like there to be an ongoing process of a joint labor management committee to be able to resolve any outstanding issues or issues that, come up in the future. The other point I'd like to make is that, the committee names quite a number of district initiatives in its response to the Joint Labor Management Committee proposal. A lot of curriculum teams and grade level or building-based teams. But these are, ironically, when the district responds and says they're worried a Joint Labor Management Committee would be top down, every one of these committees is in essence an administrative committee. They tackle administrative priorities. The members are chosen by administrators for a large part. Many of these committees don't address working conditions and other quality of life issues that arise from time to time in between collective bargaining negotiations, where a Joint Labor Management Committee could address them head on and resolve issues in a way that maintains labor management, peace, and keeps members feeling like they have a say in the decisions that are being made that affect how they do their work with their students. So it is really important to us that we have a substantive conversation about these issues, which may not be mandatory subjects of bargaining, but are certainly permissive, and we feel are designed to support the common good, to address the concerns of our community, and to provide the best education and work environment for our students and teachers.
Can I ask a question? Am I muted?
No, you're not.
Is this an advisory committee, or does this committee make decisions on curriculum, school schedules, policy changes? What's the role of the committee?
So the Joint Labor Management Committee can make recommendations. In other locals where these exist, they can either refer their recommendations to the bargaining teams if their recommendations have an impact on working conditions, and we could agree that in those cases we might reopen the CBA to address those recommendations. In other cases, they're merely an advisory board, and obviously both sides can report back to their members. We'd like to be able to say to our members that Joint Labor Management met last week. We discussed these issues that you brought to us. The district has, recognized them. They're willing to do these things. We're discussing these. It just creates an avenue outside of the traditional traditional curriculum team to address issues that may not be appropriate at those meetings. When you're at the K-5 math meeting, that might not be the time for a person to, bring up that they feel their supervisor might be a little bit, harsh on their evaluations that particular year, or whatever issues might be on the minds of the members. Labor management would be able to discuss those issues, address areas of concern, areas of mutual agreement, and maybe not solve every problem, but certainly be able to address most problems before they become larger issues in the district.
One more question, and I'm a little confused. At the local school levels, there are a lot of joint decision-making taking place on things like schedule and recommendations on curriculum. What happens to those school-based initiatives?
Those continue. Again, you might have a member on one of those building-based teams, an employee on one of those building-based teams who is participating, has been asked to join by their principal, but maybe at the end of the meeting doesn't feel like their voice was heard, or doesn't feel like the administration was taking the advice from the employees in the way that the employees were offering it. And so rather than create a scene at that meeting, you don't be insubordinate, but you bring your issues to your rep, and your rep refers it to Joint Labor Management and say, hey, we're hearing from math teachers who are worried about this issue. And this is the place where they hope to address it, so we can avoid grievances, avoid potential unfair labor practices.
And Naomi, if I can just add it, we've been at this one proposal and longer than just this particular bargaining session. We've been asking for this for a while. I really think it's going to help foster relationships between these two groups, and it's just going to give all members an opportunity to have their voices heard. Beyond every committee that you already have established, I think it's going to give us another avenue for all voices to be heard.
Right. If I may, I mean, in the short run, a Joint Labor Management Committee takes those, I know you laughed at me the last time when I mentioned it, but when Cynthia and I meet with Ben and maybe somebody from HR sometimes joins, somebody, Greg joins us, right? I call those fireside chats, those informal meetings. It just sort of expands those informal meetings. And like many of Anthony and Ruth had already mentioned, issues that are arising or problems that are developing can be nipped in the bud right there. And it's definitely a two-way street, where initiatives that school committee and the superintendent's office want to trickle down through all of the schools or throughout the district, that's a place where we'll be able to work with GTA members and administrative members and really facilitate those initiatives and run them, kind of up and down the gamut so that it works better for everybody involved. And it's better for the administrators. It's an improvement for the teachers, for the administrators, and for the students and the community of Gloucester as a whole.
If I could chime in as well, we actually used to have a committee years and years ago just for this. It was CCC, right? I don't even remember what the stood for. But we also had, like, if we had an issue, maybe the science curriculum at the middle school level was not addressing what it needed to address, we would be able to call in the experts, like science teachers, or program leaders, to be able to address that. So it's not a top down. We're not making decisions for people who are not involved. We're involving people who know, the experts again. So that's another reason why we think this will work.
You've given us a lot to consider. We'd like to take a caucus, and we'll let you know how long we think the caucus is going to need to be. Melissa isn't here, so.
I have Rachel's.
Okay. Kathy will text you, Rachel, okay?
And is there any chance you could send us that presentation?
Yes,
Thank you.
we'll work on that during the caucus.
Okay,
Thank
thanks.
Thank you.
Everybody there?
Rachel, you all back?
I'm just doing a quick head count, but I think, I don't see, is Carrie here? I think we're waiting for Carrie to return.
I don't see Carrie.
Here she comes.
Okay. All right, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. There is the first thing, I would like to offer a different perspective on your first statement on your presentation that stated that the school committee put forth a proposal that didn't reach its goals. And the goals, the three goals that we set forth were goals that I think we agreed on with the teachers, is that we wanted to retain our experienced teachers, we wanted to attract new teachers, and we wanted our teachers to be better trained. And those were the three things that we addressed in our financial proposal. And please keep in mind, as always, this was our opening financial proposal, and we expect a counter. But the reality is that we did set up a different program or different process for negotiating these salaries than we have in the past. All we've ever done in the past is say, you know, well, 1%, 2%, 3% across the board. Whether you want to call step increases a raise, we understand they're negotiated, we understand they're there, but they certainly are more money in the pocket for teachers for the first 12 years every year. And if they change tracks, then that's another increase. Those are increases that we have to pay for. These people are getting those increases, regardless of what you call them. And we understand that they're there. We're not trying to take them away. The proposal that we put forth increased the people that were already getting somewhere between a 4.5% and 6% increase by 1%, so that we would have more funds available in our budget to add more money to create a higher step and continue doing that for the next 3 years. We also propose to eliminate the lowest step. The lowest step would increase starting salary beyond what the GTA has proposed for teachers. We, as I said, this is real money. We have so much money to deal with. We tried to be creative and come up with a system that would accomplish our goals. Now, once again, I think we could agree that the format of adding a step at the top and eliminating a step at the bottom is the way we want to go. If you don't like the numbers, then Give us a counter proposal.
I also want to go back to the DART and the area comparisons, because that is really kind of the reality check that we looked at to see, trying to make sure that our salaries are in line with what other comparable districts are doing. And the DART information, just so you understand from the state perspective, it talks about enrollment demographics, as this slide shows, so we just want to review that, where we get grouped in with other districts that are similar to us based on demographics, but also based upon a district's ability to pay. So, that takes into consideration some of the financial realities of being in Gloucester relative to other districts that are similar in Gloucester. So when we did that, we picked the master's starting, and, just to review, the proposal that we have puts us, second in the list of DART districts, and it puts us third relative to the local districts on the North Shore. That's the proposal we put forth because that's just where we kind of have a reality check that what we're thinking the salary should be is in line with what's out there. And then with masters, so for the top step and the master's 60, we are in the middle of the pack in terms of our proposal. So when you bring up the claim that why give offers that don't address our claims, this is really our reality check on where would the numbers end up? Where do we sit relative to these other districts? All by trying to figure out how it all fits into our budget, and can we possibly sustain it and afford it over time? So as Jonathan said, this is our first proposal, but it is based not just on percent, picking a percent and spreading it across all the charts, all the step and track charts. It's about looking at a couple of key points and making sure we have checked our salaries to make sure we're in line with our thinking, and then hoping, that these things address the, two of the concerns of attracting and also doing an additional, increase at the top step, because we know that that is something that would be attractive to you in terms of its negotiation.
We will get you the information on the DART districts, what criteria DESI uses.
I think you're muted, Rachel.
Yeah, so I think when we give you our financial proposal back early June, we also use similar data like that to show the need for an increase in our stipended positions and athletic coaches, and you haven't addressed that at all. Will you use these same DART districts and the information on their stipended position, athletic coaches, et cetera, and offer us a counter to that proposal as well?
Yeah, Rachel, so what and I said last time, but just to reiterate, is that we'll use both DART and the same geographic districts, for all comparisons going forward, because we want to be like regular and consistent with those comparisons rather than randomly picking, whichever districts, basically.
I think we used for the Cape Ann League when we were looking at coaching salaries.
Oh,
in the
right,
past.
because, okay, yeah, sorry.
Well, you never
yeah.
countered our proposal for the coaching salaries and other stipended positions like the class advisors and NHS as well. And if you go back to the DART districts that you were using, it did indicate that all those raises are based on a 2% raise, and you offered 1. So I just thought I'd point that out as well.
So thank you, Rachel. Yep, we got that.
Wait, though.
Okay.
That's not true on the top step, Rachel, because remember, we kind of, it's a little, it's kind of muddled because we have both the step plus the additional percent.
Right.
So it's
0.5% for the step 13 for some of us teachers who haven't had a step increase in almost 20 years.
Well, the
Okay.
total
So
percent
what-
is,
So what we want to do here, just, we want to go through some of this because there seems to be some confusion, especially in emails we're getting. So just in terms of annual salary increases, there are at least 3 of them. So we've been
There's
talking
one.
about,
Sorry, with all the respect, there's one annual salary increase. It's the cost of living adjustment.
So
You offered
Anthony,
1%.
I appreciate that we may have a difference here, but can I just explain this for her without interrupting me? So there are 3 annual salary increases that are negotiated, okay? There's the step, which is the annual salary increase that's negotiated, okay, and carried over. And on the GTA salary schedule, that annual increase is typically between 4 and 6.4% every year. Now, what's very important though, as we've been discussing, is teachers on the highest step don't get a step increase annually. They only get the COLA, which we'll talk about in a moment. Something we haven't been talking about, but it's already negotiated, is the track salary increase. And that, of course, as you all know, happens when teachers complete additional coursework. And each year, a small percentage of teachers, earn that track salary increase as well. And then the one that's typically talked about most publicly during negotiations is the cost of living adjustment, which we've been talking about. We offered 1% on just the cost of living adjustment, and GTA offered proposed 3%. Okay, but that's a percentage that typically gets all the conversation, and that typically that's what's negotiated. Okay, so if we talk about what we're actually negotiating here, we're not negotiating a step increase. Okay, so that, hold on a second, don't go yet. That is 4% to 6.4%. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So we're not negotiating the step increase, which happens every year for everyone except for the folks in the top step. We're not negotiating track increases; those are already negotiated. We are negotiating the cost of living adjustment, which is an addition for everyone except for the top step, in addition to the step increase that happens every year. So before we even begin negotiations, most teachers are earning between 4 and 6.4% because their step increase.
That's exactly why you can't use that as justification for a low COLA proposal.
You want
Because
to
it's,
explain to him about how we have to meet ourselves,
it's Anthony, it's not, when you say justification for the low percent it's in certain parts of the chart, of the steps. It's not at the beginning where we've dropped one step, and it's not how we address the top step. So in combination, though, those increases are greater than the percent that you keep talking about.
because the COLA that we're negotiating is one that you've proposed is only 1%, and the school committee continues to want to talk about previous negotiated increases that aren't germane to this discussion.
They are, we have to budget them every year.
Yes, I agree, and you should have done that before we got to the table for those increases that are already there. So asking our members to take a 1% increase across the salary scale and asking veterans at the top of the scale to accept only a 0.5 on top of that with new steps. We're not disagreeing that getting rid of bottom steps would be great for new teachers. You're absolutely right that is something that we would support. But arguing that the fact that teachers who are hired at step 1 or step 3 or wherever they are, that's not at the top, should be okay with a 1% COLA because they're already getting between 4 and 6% that's part of the salary scale, just isn't fair, and it's not honest, right? We're negotiating according to the slide you're presenting right now.
We are being honest.
And well, wait a minute, folks, excuse me. You gave us a 2.25% raise in our last contract and never mentioned those steps, and those steps increases were there then. And in 2016, when you gave us a 2% raise, those step increases were there then too.
We did talk about it in the last time.
You didn't add it in and roll it in.
We didn't
and make
have
it
extensive conversations about it.
And we weren't going to agree then, and we're not going to agree now that those should be considered part of the cost of living adjustment. You're basically asking us to accept a previously negotiated increase as part of our
You're characterizing it in a different, you're characterizing it inaccurately. We're not saying that those are cost of living. We're saying that those are increases that we need to fit into a budget. And when you say we need to fit it into our budget, it's one thing to say we have costs. It's another to go get that budget approved from the city. So that's the balancing act of what do we think the city can bear over the course of the 3-year contract. So that's
May
why
I-
that's why we're having these discussions. We go
And
back
while
and
we-
forth.
Please, Matt, please do not interrupt. Kathy and John, but both are trying to say something for a while. Please let them speak.
My apologies.
So
Continue.
I'm just saying, we're having these discussions because there are constraints and there are opportunities. And we are always trying to balance those as part of the budget process, as part of the negotiating process. So this is where we have started. If you do not, you can repropose and say, don't put any more money into new, removing that step at the bottom. Then we're having a totally different discussion what starting pay is for teachers. But all these things need to figure out how to be funded, not just in this negotiating room, but every spring when we go to the city for our total
We
budget.
understand
And
that, but the 4 to 6.4%, you should already be funded. And we
It's not
shouldn't be
fun.
asked.
The city could say we're getting no money next year, okay? And yes, we still have to fund those, which means we have to reduce elsewhere. That's just the way it would have to work.
We
So
understand.
we're
how budgets
trying not
work,
to be in
but
that
it's just-
situation.
Anthony, please try not to interrupt, please. We won't interrupt you. Please interrupt us.
We'd like to have a chance to speak too, though. Okay?
That's fine. I'm just saying, we don't really, we're trying to be responsible and have a dialogue about this obviously most important part of the negotiation process. And we understand how important this is to you, and it is important to us. Because we want teachers to feel really good about working in Gloucester Public Schools for more than just the reason of pay, but for many reasons. So we always need to figure out how that works through the process of here versus fitting it into our budget and having the city approve it. So please understand that we don't have an unending pot of money. And that's where we approach this from the start.
May I state, first of all, that the budget is not balanced on the backs of teachers. And the starting pay is for a person that has received their master's and continues to make progress towards her recertification and constantly takes graduate courses is $50,000. That's what step increases are for them to realize the salary that they deserve over a course of 10 years. I might also add, just FYI, they have a 3-year probationary period, which is unprecedented in any occupation. So they're getting step increases to realize the salary that they should be getting as a professional. That is not a cost of living raise. It is not a raise. It is what they deserve to be that professional. Like Anthony said, this budget should have been approved already. You should have known that this was coming. And also, I want to also add, like I said before, you're adding positions too. I mean, this is the priority. You're making priorities here. So you feel that you can add positions, yet only offer 1% as a COLA. That's what we're seeing here.
Well, Cynthia, your proposal was 7% for most of your bargaining unit members, and it would cost us $2 million.
3%.
No, it wasn't 3. It was 3 and then 4% for people on max.
No,
Okay.
it was 3%, and we proposed another step.
Of 4%,
Okay,
and that would cost us $2 million.
Actually, our costs, are about much less than that. On the base, 3% increase on the base alone is about $718,671. If you include the top step the GTA proposed, in that first year, it would bring the total for the entire new scale, 7.26% at just over $1.7 million. That's just in the first year. In the second year, and even if you, and this, this it would create another $740,000 in new money, and only $762 for the 3% increase in new dollars. Again, those in the first year, it is bigger if you count the new step raise, but after that, it is not that significant of an increase. And again, it's still below inflation.
We'd like to finish these slides. It's like you guys had a bunch of presentation which you put together, okay? I think school committee members would like to finish their presentation and talk about some of the specifics of their opening proposal.
Okay.
It's up there.
All right, so what we're going to show you is essentially the salaries that we are offering in actual numbers and in percentages, and the history of the past contract of 3 years. And as you can see, and it's alongside the GTA opening proposal. These are both opening proposals. And so what we proposed for this year is a 1.5 to 2.12%. And what the GTA has proposed is a 3 to 7.77%. And in dollars, it shows you the actual dollars that the salaries have increased. This is the top step, masters plus 60 over the last 3 years. And what we are proposing for this year, and also, which is just under $2,000 increase, whereas the GTA proposal is just over $7,000. What? Yeah, so exactly, what we're proposing is in line with what you've received over the last contract. It's not out of line. Perhaps when you give us a counter, you'll keep that in mind.
To Rachel's point earlier, those same proposals you just showed 2%, 2.5, 2.25%. Those numbers back then were not considering step increases like you'd like the GTA to consider now. Those were COLAs on above and beyond any step increase or classification change, and above and beyond any extracurricular work that would result in a stipend or hourly wage. Right, those things are all separate because they require, they're unrelated to the COLA. The COLA is applied to the scale, and as in the past, where it was 2.5% or 2.25%, it was irrespective of the step increases and class changes that are already negotiated. As you said yourself, we're not negotiating over those, we're negotiating over the COLA. And your offer is 1%. And then, yes, we could absolutely go back, and we'd love to go back and forth about, the top step and the difference between 4% and 0.5%, and whether to do that in all 3 years or just 1 year. But, this is a really, really important issue because it is what 52% of our members are going to see for an actual cost of living adjustment. If someone is moving from step 10 to 11, that is money they've already budgeted to expect for the next school year. And any increase is additional to that, as it always was before. So again, showing these ranges as the actual proposals, those ranges may be the effective increase for an individual, but it is not considered the raise they earned in that school year. Only the COLA is the raise that we're negotiating over.
Okay, we don't agree with you. It's money that we have to budget, but I don't think we're ever going to reach an agreement on that. You made us a proposal. You said you wanted across the board increase, and you wanted to do something for the maximum steps. Your proposal is too costly. And that was the first proposal. We would like you to give us a counter proposal that we can consider.
And can we discuss this slide, which shows that we're being more generous than?
And just the slide that's on up now just shows you what our proposal is for starting teachers and what your proposal is for starting teachers.
The dollar. That's what the dollar.
May I ask a question now, or is this not a good time?
Just 1 second, Rachel.
And that's the actual dollar increase. We're proposing a $2,800 increase for starting teachers, and you're proposing a $1,500 increase, which achieves one of our goals.
We haven't rejected the idea of dropping the lowest step, so I think that's a little bit misrepresentative of our position in terms of the opening year.
It wasn't part of your
It
proposal.
wasn't part of your,
that's what
was it
John
part of your
said.
proposal, Anthony?
It's not, but we haven't rejected it in term, we're not, again, it's, you know, we're looking at a 3% increase on the COLA. And we're talking about that in general. And by the way, none of our current members, if they're on the first step, they won't be on that first step. So this is talking about potential members in the future. Right now, if you drop that first step, nobody's getting a raise because nobody would be on that first step next year. Those people would
No,
be
we're
hired.
just talking, sorry. We're just talking about here with, about the opening proposals. That's, we understand you haven't offered that. We're just talking about where proposals stand and, you know, I think what we're trying to show here is that, you know, one of our goals, one of the school committee's goals, sorry, is to, you know, raise starting salaries across the board. And this is puts the dollars and percentages, what that actually means, an increase in starting salary, which as you can see is, you know, is above most, you know, 2 out of the last 3 years. You wanna show anything else here? We also had some responses, I think, to,
Can you stay a little later? We're supposed to end at 6. We had some responses to our proposals and we needed some information from you as well. So what are your thoughts? You want us to do that next time or should we run through it quickly now?
I don't want to speak for the whole team. Rachel, what do you think? I'm available. I could, no reason I can't stay.
Why don't we caucus to discuss this? Just a quick
Okay.
5 minute.
We'll just take 5 minutes.
Okay.
So we'll go back into executive session. So moved. I move.
Second.
You want me to send it to him now?
Everybody think the Red Sox will win tomorrow night?
They look pretty good the other night.
Rachel, what did you do to your dog?
What do you mean what I do to my dog?
So quiet now.
Yeah, I gave him a bone to chew on. And it's when like the neighbors are out walking, and so I think this is more of a dinner time. But thank you for that 5-minute caucus. We can work, but we need a hard stop at 6:30.
Oh,
And
it won't take us that long.
oh, great. And before we move forward, and not to beat the dead horse, but I'm really good at that. I'd like for us to consider moving forward. I know that we're having a difficulty moving forward from the tying the step increases to the cost of living raised. And I'm just going to ask if you'll consider moving forward to separate them, as in all of our previous negotiations going back several years, we've never combined them. So I'd just like for you to consider separating the step increases. We can all agree that increase definitely happens. However, they've never been tied to the cost of living or to a raise. So if we can consider separating those, because our membership we're going to have a really hard time selling this to the membership for a ratification if we can't separate those. And I'm not going to say any more about that. I know beating the dead horse, and you've got other things to address.
A couple other things, though. Other districts have also given bonuses because the pandemic, that would not show in their salary scales. And we do need to reiterate that this has been a pandemic. We have gone above and beyond. And to come back with a 1-1 is, quite frankly, insulting. And this is a priority. These are priorities that you are making. New positions over funding teachers' COLA raises and other things. So, I mean, if this was important to you, like Matt said before, you would make it happen.
Cynthia, you're saying we don't need the new positions? Teachers were asking for additional positions.
Just saying.
We're saying if you want to keep them.
Why don't we move on,
filled,
okay?
we need to offer more. So, well, let's move on. I think
Okay, all right.
Rachel and Cynthia made some excellent points, but we do want to hear
I'm
your
gonna try
responses
to
and
go-
answer your questions.
I'm going to try to go through these really quickly. We have some changes in our proposals, and we have some questions that we'd like you to consider. So in 1 and 2, we understand that you still want us committee involved in the grievance procedure. So we're going to withdraw these proposals. We have an agreement on 3. We need to have a greater discussion of how we handle the meetings and why we think we need some meetings to last a little longer so that we can cover everything we need to cover. But, so we'd like to have further discussion with you on that. Yeah. Number 5, teaching hours and load. We believe that teachers of these classrooms need to be safety care trained. And if they're not safety care trained, then maybe, we need to look at that. If they can't be safety care trained, or if they can't handle lifting the kids. But from a safety point of view and consistent with the IEP, we do need that training. This might not be that big an issue. Perhaps most of the teachers are trained. We're still looking into that. But we'd like to hear back from you on that. 6, we want to discuss with you how we do professional development, but we'll have a discussion of that later. In 7, talking about the program leaders, Rachel and Rich, I think you talked about how program leaders provide support and suggestions to staff and mentor them. And we want to talk to you about how this happens and the kind of model that's used at the high school. But we can't get into that right now. But we would like to have further discussion with you about how the program leaders assist the staff in their department in improving their instruction. We want to talk a little bit more about the duties, but we can have a discussion with you later. We're not trying to eliminate any paraprofessional positions. With the bridge coverage, we feel it's really important that the staff, the teachers interact with those kids in the bridge program and help to bring them back to the high school full time. Yes, Rachel.
I thought that we had addressed that. We have a new position in the GAPE union where I believe the woman who's in the position currently, she handles the MCAS rollouts and coordination for MCAS, and she also spends a block in the library and the block in the bridge program, or a block in PACE and a block in the bridge program. So I wonder if that's already been addressed, and if that proposal could be withdrawn. You could double check with James at the high school or with
We'll get
Monica.
back to you on that.
There's library coverage in it too.
And there's library coverage too. We're proposing library coverage as well.
But I think that GAPE position covers those 3 areas.
We'll get back to you on that. And something that's really important is that there's a way that the teachers interact with those kids, which is part of our proposal with the kids in the bridge program. But we'll get back to you. Under 9, you said that you didn't think the 24 hours was reasonable, particularly for those teachers that had a very large load. So we'd like you to tell us what you think is reasonable.
I believe we did. In our counter for that, I thought we said it, I thought we did. But we'll double check
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
All right.
I thought we did.
Okay, in number 10, we withdrew our proposal on 517. Number 11, we're going to withdraw our proposal on the sick leave bank. Number 12, we're not trying to prevent people from going to doctor's appointments. We're not trying to do that. And we'd like to brainstorm a solution here. We're having major problems with substitutes. If people know in advance, if they have a scheduled doctor's appointment, we need them to tell us so that we can arrange proper coverage. We understand that if something comes up, if a doctor gets a cancellation and can fit you in, or if you have a health issue, of course you're not going to be able to tell us. But what we'd like to happen is for people to tell us as far in advance as possible if they anticipate having a doctor's appointment.
And I think asking us to do that would be totally reasonable, but to penalize us with loss of a day's pay if we don't is totally unreasonable.
So hear that, and so please offer us a counter. You know, that's what I think we need to, and I hope we can get into, how we make progress here in all negotiations is, proposals and counters. So please provide us with a counter on that.
By the way, do you have this all in writing that you can send to us?
We will get it to you,
We'll
right?
get it to you in writing, okay? We're withdrawing number 13. We'd like to explain to you in number 14 that what we want to discuss with you is our problems with May and June. We're just not able to get substitutes. We'd like to discuss with you some way that we can plan in advance or define what those days will be used for.
I just have to say that finding substitutes is not our problem. And solving the substitute problem on the backs of teachers is not acceptable. If you have a substitute problem, you've got to solve that. Maybe you have to increase the pay. Maybe you have to go to the colleges like we suggested and work with a co-op group with Endicott or Gordon and get some student teachers in. But to have us to take away our benefits because you're having a substitute problem is not acceptable.
Cynthia, we're not taking away your benefits. I can give you contracts where they do deal with personal days in May and June. We want to brainstorm this issue with you. We want the teachers in the classrooms, and May and June are critical times.
And May and June are when things happen in people's lives, like graduations and weddings. It's the way life works.
And those can be arranged in advance. We can get advance notice because people know about graduations and weddings.
Yeah, the answer is not no in May and June. It's just so we can have some planning. And, you know, one person has something they could be flexible on, but 5 other people in their, you know, in their school are out. Then, you know, because of graduations or weddings or whatever, we're hoping for some, you know, ability to maybe, you know, be flexible or adjust requests that maybe not have so many people out on one particular day.
So are you revising your language because you had said no personal days are not personal days
This
are
is
not
what-
permitted in May or June?
This is what our goal is. We'd like a counter from you.
We
We
countered
told
this
you
one.
the interest that we're trying to address, okay?
We're respectfully rejecting that proposal.
We already counted this,
Excuse me,
actually.
Cynthia, I thought you wanted us to go through our proposals. We're going through our proposals. We want to engage in a dialogue. You haven't even.
Naomi, what you're doing is you're representing your proposals. I mean,
All right, forget it. We won't give it.
Okay.
I just want to be, so I mean, just to, you know, that point, you know, just so we can understand where this conversation might be heading. You know, it does currently say in your proposal, you know, that we rejected because we felt it was too strong. You know, personal days are not permitted in May or June. I understand you'd like us to counter this, but we also had a lot of proposals that you rejected that we would prefer you counter. And we're, you know, those are the ones we addressed at the beginning of the meeting. But to, you know, another important point, if we were to counter, or if you were to revise your proposal to perhaps help us reach agreement, in May or June, you know, what happens if it's not something you can plan in advance, like a wedding? What if your water heater blows up? What if, you know, the tree falls on your house? This current language doesn't allow for, you know, emergency situations that wouldn't be covered by other leaves, like a sick day.
I thought we had counted. I just want to clarify. I have to ask this question. I thought we had counted. I know you're getting upset that you think we didn't, but I think we need to clarify. I thought we had.
So, in terms of you guys, you know, presented responses to our proposals on 2 different days. And this one was, your response in writing was reject, educators should be trusted with their personal days. That was the extent of your comments. So,
absolutely, and we stand by that.
so Ruth, just to answer your question, there hasn't been any counter on that. It's just the flat rejection so far.
I think we received flat rejections from you too, and that is a flat rejection.
Cynthia, this isn't helpful.
I'm just trying to, Ruth had a question about whether you guys had countered something. I'm trying to just share what you actually shared. I'm not trying to characterize it one way or the other. It's just, that's where we were on this one.
What you're trying to do is just to concede that we will give away some of our benefits, like personal days. Excuse me, and we're not willing to do that. So we're respectfully rejecting that proposal, the same way that you respectfully rejected many of our proposals.
Okay, all right, okay, we got it. Crystal clear, got it.
Do you want us to go through these and explain what our interests are?
No, just finish up, please.
Yes, please, if you could.
All right.
Thank you.
Religious days isn't something new. That was in the old collective bargaining agreement. That isn't something we added here. Evaluation, we're probably not very far apart, but we need to have a discussion about the evaluation instrument. These were the procedures that were put in place a couple of years ago. We just need to have a discussion about that.
held it, right?
Right. We need to have a greater discussion about the high school schedule and the O'Malley schedule. Graduate courses, I think maybe Cynthia and Rachel might have had some discussions with Greg about this, about graduate courses and online distance learning. We just need to put that at the table and figure out how we want to proceed with those. And I think that's it. And we will get you something in writing. Yeah, and we would like a counter on compensation for you at the next meeting.
So we can definitely have, a counter for the next meeting, which is 2 weeks from today on the 18th, correct?
Right.
We would, like to also, continue our discussion about the collaborative, the proposals for collaboration that we did start today. We were hoping, that we could, figure out, come to terms on some of these items. We'd like some counters from you as well, or at least, a discussion about the kind of work that a joint labor management committee could do if we can agree to terms on setting something like that up. That might help to resolve some of these issues if we can agree to terms on that group.
I think we can have, well, we need to, we haven't, I was gonna offer something, but I realized I have not discussed with my team at all, so I can't, so I'm not gonna offer that. But we will, we'll discuss the joint labor committee, and I think we'll see if we can get you a response to that next time we meet.
Right, and if you do go back to that document, Ben, that you had referenced about the personal days from 5/17/21, in the 24-hour communication limit, we actually did mention that 48 hours was the shortest turnaround time we agreed to. So that's
Okay,
actually in
that's
that
very
document.
helpful. Thank you,
Okay.
Rachel.
Thanks, Rachel.
In doing this, we were just trying to explain to you what our interests were, what we were hoping to achieve. And maybe we could have written them a little differently, but we wanted to share with you why we made the proposal.
So,
It definitely helps to understand, perspective. And, just as, it helps us to understand your perspective, we definitely appreciate you hearing our perspective on these issues. And, we do look forward to continuing this process, hopefully exchanging some counters next week. That if we could both come back with some language counters, I think that would be a good place to start off with when we come into our next session.
in 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. 2 weeks.
Yes, Melissa's husband's birthday, so
Right.
That's awesome. Well,
have a
she's like,
cupcake. Birthday cake.
thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
See
night.
you on the 18th.
Good night.
Thank you.
Any GTA members, a link to a debrief went out to your home emails. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Go ahead, Maria.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Yes,
Yes. Good night, everyone.
good night.
Good night.
We're still, we're still